Hello and welcome to 18 WJTS-Inform as we meet candidates running for office. And now we're going to meet someone running for a federal office in the U.S. Congress District number 8. That is Andrew Horning. Andy Horning is from Freedom, Indiana. And we're going to find out a little bit more about him. He is a libertarian running in this coming election. Actually now in Du Bois County, you can be voting now all the way up through November 4th. Now I know some counties you may only be able to vote on November 4th, but be considering who to vote for. And we're going to meet Andrew Horning and see if he warrants your vote.
So,
hey, Andrew, first of all, if you could start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have 5 kids. I live on a little farm in Freedom, Indiana. I say I live on a farm. I'm not a farmer. That requires skills I do not possess. I work in the medical device industry in like design and implementation of medical imaging equipment. And I'm I belong to a Reformed Presbyterian church, but that's pretty much all there is about me. Just personally, I'm just a regular guy with a day job, which makes it hard to campaign sometimes.
Sure. Yeah. Why did you decide to run?
Well, you know, it really gets down to the fact a lot of people talk a good story, but they don't do anything about it. And when if you're a constitutionalist like I am, and you don't see anybody else standing to put the Constitution on the ballot, you know, just simple rule of law stuff, you got to do something about it. Plus, the state of corruption in this country is so great and vast and, you know, global that what am I going to, I can't just sit on my hands. Mm-hmm. And if you don't see anybody standing up to talk about it, I just felt it was my job to do it.
Okay, well now, this is going to be kind of wide open. We can see where we go from there, but talk about what you think are issues, concerns, challenges for the Congress, for the United States government as we head in now and into the future.
Most of what we call issues are just symptoms of one great big problem that we have left unaddressed. You know, people talk about it all the time. Mm-hmm. People will say it with their mouths, but they do everything but, you know, deal with the fact that our government is corrupt. So you talk about, you know, you hear from Tea Party groups and Occupy Wall Street, and lots of these protesters have one thing in common. They know that our government is corrupt. It's been sold out long ago. A dozen presidents have told us as much. You know, we have somebody like Eisenhower, who was both a general and president, top of the visible order of political power, warning us about the guys behind the curtain, you know, the military-industrial complex in his case, but most presidents have warned us about the bankers, you know, the central bankers, you know, Andrew Jackson, Thomas Jefferson, you know, even people like Woodrow Wilson, who is not on my, you know, my top tier of presidential like list. I do not like a lot of what he did, but he understood that in his words, we'd become the most corrupt government in the civilized world. And you think about 100 years ago, Woodrow Wilson thought that we had sold out to corporate interests. You hear people talking about that, but every election day we say attaboy to that whole two-party system that has been corrupted for 100 years now. And so the entrenchment of power of the Democrats and Republicans, from precinct committeemen, which only Democrats and Republicans were even allowed to have precinct committeemen, by the way, the laws that they have written themselves for special powers in elections and through politics, all unconstitutional, but we keep saying yes with our votes. We can protest all we want in the street, but as long as we keep allowing this to happen and approving it with our votes, it's only going to get worse. And that's what, you know, why we have all of the endless wars, why all of the militarization of police, all these other things you think of as issues have a common cause. And we need to strike at the root instead of just nibbling at the branches all the time.
Well, what do we strike at? Is it the lobbyists that are the problem? Is it the term limits that are the problem?
No, it's simpler than that. It's unfortunately vastly simpler. One of the things that we have to realize as voters is that we have a lot more power and accountability than we've been led to believe. All this stuff about, oh, just, you know, my vote doesn't count, or I'm throwing my vote away if I vote for liberty, that's baloney. They want you to believe that. They would like very much for you to believe that it took us a long time to get here and it'll take a long time to fix it. But that's not how this country has ever worked. You know, look at how fast things have been happening, and then you'll understand that the whole point of elections, the one reason we have elections, is it's our mode of peaceful revolution. It's not, we don't have to pick up guns to fire, you know, to shoot the bums. We can just fire them. And that was the whole point of having a democratic process under a constitutional republic. And if we would only read some of these laws we've thrown away, we'd see that all of this is within our grasp, that we can just throw it aside, because really the issue here is not, the lobbyists and the lawyers and all of the people who are spitting out laws like watermelon seeds so much as it is the voters who keep saying yes to the direction we've been going for 100 years now. All we have to do is say, no, we're not happy with this, take a new direction, and it wouldn't even matter so much if you voted for a socialist or a libertarian. Those two opposites would have one common thing. They're not part of the problem right now. They haven't sold out yet. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but the fact that we have a system that has sold out and we say that it's okay, that's the message we're sending to Washington, D.C. And I think that people don't understand how powerful their vote really is in raising the confidence of our ruling class to the point where they know they can get away with anything, because no matter what we say, we have been voting for them no matter what.
Yeah, that has really been happening. But now Congress has the lowest approval rating, I think, in history. Okay, but are there enough libertarians running to change that? Are there enough independent candidates running to change that? Will people
honestly
vote?
I would write in my mother if there was a blank spot on the ballot, that I don't have some other candidate for. Mm-hmm. If there's a write-in candidate, if there's a Green Party candidate, if there's a Libertarian Party candidate, I'd vote for anybody but a Democrat. There are a lot of Democrats and Republicans I respect a great deal. I have met Tom Spangler. I like him personally. Mm-hmm. But he can't fix his party. Nobody can. I stopped even voting in primaries some time ago because I understood that my role in that is approval. I'm approving a process that I do not approve of. It's an illegal, unconstitutional process to begin with. And I've even tried to get a lawsuit going on that. But the fact that we keep saying yes when we, with our votes, when we should be saying no with everything we do on a daily basis, is something that they can see very easily. And so, it's not just libertarian. I mean, I'd like to think that the ideology of libertarian, which is, by the way, just less trust in government and more constitution. It's constitutional rule of law, putting politics on a leash and keeping it out of our lives as much as possible. In fact, if there's one core to libertarianism, it's an anti-violence. So while we are strong proponents of things like the Second Amendment and such, it's really because we want to limit anybody from having a monopoly on violence and the promotion of violence, which is what governments always have been about, oppression, slavery, genocide, and war. That's history as old as Adam.
What is a libertarian?
Well,
I mean, a lot of people go, oh, okay. I don't even know if really people know what a Republican or Democrat is.
I don't know.
It seems to get grayer and grayer as we go.
I sure don't know it. Well, Democrat and Republican's easy. I mean, you can see who owns them. You can follow the money. Okay. With libertarian, you actually have a question you can ask about what the ideology is. But really, it's rooted in that, and the word libertarian is pretty ancient, liberalis, liberal, all of that stuff is what we originally were called. But the word liberal has changed. Mm-hmm. Our use of liberal is opposite, even when we're talking about liberalizing trade in China, means the opposite of liberal trade in the United States. So, liberal in this country has unfortunately come to mean socialism, when an authoritarianism, when that's the opposite of what a libertarian is. A libertarian is about maximum individual liberty, minimal politics. So keep politics to an absolute minimum. You kind of think of like government like a junkyard dog. You want to keep it behind a fence and on a chain. You don't want it, educating your kids.
What do you see as really the function of the U.S. government?
Well, I see the function of the U.S. government as what's already written into the Constitution of the United States of America and further described by the Constitution of Indiana. Those two things go together. And very few of us have read them, so it's frustrating I have to explain it because I didn't even read the U.S. Constitution until I was 30, and oddly I didn't even read the Indiana Constitution until I was almost 40. And so I understand that nobody's done this. Mm-hmm. But after having read those constitutions, I am shocked that we have thrown all of this away. It's embarrassing to have been granted so much in our laws and to have it right there for us to take and use whenever we choose. Those constitutions are amazing, and they've described a government that is highly limited but highly focused. So things like murder, rape, theft, government is supposed to focus on real crime and get the heck out of most everything else. They're supposed to be leaving us alone if we don't hurt anybody. As long as we're, doing our business without harm, as long as we're, tending our lives without harming anyone else or coercing anyone else, the Constitutions give us tremendous freedom. And that recipe, was the most successful of all time, allowing people to do what they do best, allowing doctors to heal, allowing engineers to engineer. Without political interference, that's how stuff works. And you think about how many great monuments and roads and bridges and things we built before we had income tax, before we had, the things that people say are necessary to have schools and bridges and roads. We had schools and bridges and roads. And we had great schools and bridges and roads. The fact that these things were done without the means that we have come to be, we've been told are necessary, should be instructive to us. But we're so, can I say the word ignorant without sounding judgmental? But we're so ignorant about our own history and laws and the culture that we could have had that it's a shame. And in fact, even if you look at the black culture after the Civil War, the people like Frederick Douglass, if I cannot stand up, let me fall down. That kind of thing was powerful, and they were so successful in that brief window before the Jim Crow laws really took hold, that if we understood that part of our history at all, when the Constitution for the first time applied to just about everybody, and you could see how it worked for them, where there are more black engineers, more black farmers, more black scientists then than there are today, we should see that that is a recipe for success that we ought to try again, especially since it's already law, it's ours by law. All we have to do is approve it with our votes.
Now you're dealing a lot with domestic. What about foreign? Should we have a foreign policy? What's your thoughts on a foreign policy?
Sure, foreign policy. Peace, commerce, honest friendship with all nations, entangling alliances with none was how was originally articulated by Jefferson. Now, I'm not sure about the honest friendship. I might be a little bit more, a little bit like cautious, skepticism. But still, the fact that we should trade with people until they prove that they're enemies, and then we deal with that as it comes. But without a declaration of war, we haven't declared a war constitutionally since World War II. And yet, the firing hasn't stopped since the war to end all war. So we became an empire, technically, practically, morally, with the Spanish-American War, and we never turned back. We've been becoming more heavily armed. We've been getting more intrusive. And you look to see what we did in the Middle East. It started with the British and French, and people like Lawrence of Arabia. They're drawing up lines where there were none before. They tell these people to go over here. You go over here. Let's carve this out. We're going to make you do this. We're going to make you do that. We angered them so much after World War I, in particular, that the Arabs ended up siding with Hitler in World War II, which ended up making the United States mad enough at them that we decided to plop a whole new country into their place. We screwed everything up in their world. And then when Nixon came along and arranged the petrodollar system in 1972-73, we basically tied our dollar and our foreign system of militarism to that whole region of the world that we had already angered and embroiled and made promises to and broke promises to. We basically did to them what we did to the Indians, where we made treaties and broke all of them, and we manipulated them. We made them move this way. You go to your reservation, you go to your reservation, and we expect that the longer we club these people into submission, the more they're going to like us. That's bad foreign policy. I think it would be much smarter to leave people to tend to their own nations, because we have problems here that we have not been dealing with. And in fact, I would say that a better foreign policy would be to mind your domestic policy until you've got no troubles here. Then maybe you can talk about, judging other nations and blowing them up, as we've been doing so regularly for the past 100 years.
We're limited on time. And I want to give you an opportunity to say, anything, because there's so many other topics we could talk about.
Oh, boy.
And maybe people will get an opportunity at the Vincennes University Jasper campus forum that'll be coming up on Tuesday, October 28th. But that'd be a chance for them to again meet and talk with you. But I'm going to give you just a few minutes. How would you like to get those voters to vote for you?
Well, I mean, I've got more information about me and about my stands and about my constitutional rule of law. I've got annotated constitutions, both Indiana and U.S., on my website at horningforcongress.com. So if you go to horningforcongress.com, I've got press releases going back over a year. People ask me why they never hear about me and all that stuff. I've been sending out press releases regularly for over a year, since August of 2013. I've been out doing stuff for over a year, and actually for many years. I was a columnist. I've been an activist. I've done lots of things. But I got to tell you, voters, you've got to take accountability for not only just your power in the voting booth, but your accountability to live with the results. And the fact that, voters have the power to throw all of this off anytime they choose. On a single day, we can wipe everything out. Look at the things that the United States has already done with starting a prohibition and then ending a prohibition in just a few years. We granted women the right to vote. We had a civil rights movement. Look at how fast these things happen. Look at how fast Obamacare happens to us. Things always happen fast in politics. It doesn't take a long time to get here. It wouldn't take a long time to fix, and it's all a choice. If this all comes crashing down, we still have to choose how we're going to live together. So what we have to do is think. We have to stop delegating away all of our choices to politicians to do our thinking for us. We have to think for ourselves. We have to get our own information. We have to process it in our own brains as it applies to our own lives, and make decisions with the understanding that you're going to be the ones to have to live with it.
All right, well, Andrew, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in. We have had as our guest Andrew Horning. He is running for U.S. Congress for District 8. Thank you for watching WJTS Inform. Remember, take advantage of your right to vote, and vote today or vote on November 4th, depending on how you're able to vote. Thank you very much for watching. We are local people watching local people.